Okay, in this video we are going to be learning some different watercolor techniques. So you can just follow along on the video. You probably just want to watch the demo and then you can pause the video and go from there. I am going to show you 6 different techniques on this little piece of paper, different things you can do with watercolor paint. Remember, you are going to always be doing your mixing in the lid. You will not be putting a bunch of water in your pans because you don't want it to soak in. For a couple of things, we can actually get pigment straight out of the pan, but I'll show you that and I'll let you know when we get to that part. The first thing you need to do is write your name on your paper. Flip that over, and then you're going to use the tape to create 6 little sections on your paper. My tape is blue because I didn't have any of the white tape at my house, so just divide your paper in half somehow. It really doesn't matter how you do it as long as you have 6 sections. Okay. It's okay if it sticks to the table because it'll actually kind of hold your paper down, so it's not a bad thing. When we are done with the painting and the different techniques, we're actually going to take the tape off and that area will be white. Yeah. So the first thing we're going to do is a wash. So a wash is an area where you're going to cover the whole area with the same exact color, and you're going to try to create an even area as you can. So you want the whole area to be the same color. You don't want streaks and white spots and dark spots or little puddles. It sounds really easy, but it does take some practice, so we'll try to get it as smooth as possible for the video. You can use whatever color you want, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to use this green that's already here, add a little more water to it. Just trying to get more pigment here. So we're just going to do it on dry paper. You can do washes different ways, but this is just one way to do it. There's lots and lots and lots of techniques that you can use for watercolor, but I'm just going to show you a few basic ones so you might be able to use them for your painting. I want to have quite a bit because I have to cover a pretty substantial area. Actually, I can make the green a little bit darker so you can see it better on the video. Okay, remember, if your paint is not moving like water, then it's probably too thick. So if you see where I move my brush through it and then it pretty much covers it up instantly, then this is actually a little bit thick. Should be a little bit watery. If it's just staying and it's kind of sticky and gooey when you're moving it around, then you need a lot more water. So let me show you an example. If it's just stuck like that, then you probably need more water. A lot of times I'll see students using their paint and they just keep putting this sticky paint and it starts looking like this. That is nowhere near enough water. And see how it just stays the same? That's because there's not enough water. It should be kind of moving around. So I'm actually going to use this in here. See, this is still too thick. Okay, so I'm going to start my wash. So when you're creating a wash, you need to be careful to keep it going. So you want to start at the top and then work your way down. You want to keep a wet edge. So that means wherever you're painting, you keep it wet and you keep moving down. If you let it dry it all on the edge, it's going to leave a streak. So you have to work kind of quickly. It sort of depends on the paper that you're using. This is watercolor paper, so it usually doesn't absorb the water too much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to do this section right here. I'm just going to start up here. Just kind of use the side of your brush. I keep missing this little edge, so I'm trying to go back and get it. Okay, so it's pretty even. I'm going to dry my brush off because there's a little spot down here. I want to get that little bit right there. So if you dry your brush, say you have a little puddle in there, you dry your brush on your paper towel, Sometimes you can come in and just barely touch it and get rid of it, but you don't want to go back over everything because it'll start getting streaky. So it's pretty even. I have a little dark spot right there, but it's fairly even. The more practice you have, the more even your washes will get. But this is just a little practice one. So I do have this rag over here. You guys will have a paper towel. If you want to bring a rag to school, or you want to use a rag instead of using the paper towels in class, you can go ahead and bring one if you'd like, or use one at home too. So I'm going to add some blue to the green just to get a different color here. Remember, you don't want to contaminate your color, so I just got a little bit of green in there, so I'm going to get that out of there. So the next thing we're going to do is a gradient wash, and that's when it changes from light to dark. You can also do a gradient that goes from one color to another, but we're just going to do a regular gradient that goes from a dark pigment to almost nothing. You guys sometimes think of it as ombre, which I don't know where that word came from. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do it down here, just so it's not right next to the green one. So you're going to start with the darkest pigment, and then you're just going to add water to it. You do want to have a rag next to you, because in case you have too much water in your paintbrush, then you can dab it on there, and then you'll get rid of some of it, and then you can add more water, and it'll lighten up. Because if you have the same stuff in your paintbrush the whole time, sometimes it just makes like a big blob on your paper, so you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. It's pretty dark. And then I'm going to add a little bit more water. And again, you have to keep a wet edge here. And that's about it. You can make it darker too. This actually came out lighter than I expected. So you can't really see it that well in the video, but it starts darker and then it moves downward. I'm going to go ahead and do it again just because you probably shouldn't do that, but just for the video. Because if you do it too many times, your paper will start getting probably rough. It'll start like pilling up a little bit. But this is watercolor paper, so it doesn't get affected that much by water. Now I can see it a little bit better on the video. It's a little bit too light right there, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave it. This part right here is a little bit too dark, so I just dried my brush off a little bit and I'm just barely touching it to get rid of that. Okay, so the next technique we will try is the resist. So resist is when you draw something or you put something on your paper that will resist the paint. So you're going to use the crayon for this, and then you're going to draw something on here. So just draw something on a space with the crayon, and then after that we will paint over it. So this is kind of like when you're dyeing Easter eggs and you draw on it with that kind of waxy clear crayon, and then you dip it in the egg dye, and then you see whatever design you drew on it. So I'm just gonna come over here, I'm gonna get some blue. Okay, so I've got a fairly dark color. I'm just gonna do a wash over the wax. You don't have to stick to one color, you could do multiple colors if you wanted to, but go over it. So you can kind of see the design here. You can do lots of different types of designs. The darker it is and the lighter your crayon is, the more prominent your design is going to be. So the next technique we're going to do is wet on wet. So I'm going to do a quick wash, and then I'm going to drop some other colors into it, and you'll see where the color kind of spreads out. So I'm going to make some other colors, or actually I'm just going to get these colors a little bit wet so I can grab some of the pigment really quickly. I want it ready to go so I can work quickly. My base color, I think I'll just use some of this green. I'm going to add quite a bit of water to it so it's really light. And then again, I'm going to do a quick wash over that area, and then I'm just going to grab some paint from the other colors that I chose, and then I'm just going to drop little drops of that color in there. You want it fairly wet. You don't want it dripping, but you also don't want it to dry because then it won't really work. You have to work pretty quickly. You'll see the color just sort of bleeds out of it. And it kind of spreads out. It's kind of like tie-dye. It just does its own thing. The more wet the paper is, the more it's going to spread around. See here, it's kind of drying because it's bowing a little bit, so it's not as receptive to it. It didn't spread out as much. Okay, the next one we're going to do is dry brushing. So dry brushing is just that. You're going to dry your brush, and then you'll get a little bit of pigment from one of the colors you already have. So I think I'll actually use this blue. But you just want a little bit. You want to get your brush pretty dry. I like to scrape it off on the side a little bit, and then just go over the area. Like quickly, make sure your brush is pretty dry because that'll give it some texture, but it'll let some of the paper show through. You can use that for areas that you want to be a little more textured. A lot of people use this type for like grass or fur, things like that. And you can layer it too, so I could actually come in here with a different color. Actually, maybe this green. And you'll get a totally different effect. You can try more than one color if you want. Just make sure that you're using a dry brush and it doesn't fill the whole area. So for this section, I'm just going to do a pattern with plain water to show you how color follows the water. So you can draw things or paint something in with plain water and then drop colors into it. And it'll move through that shape, but it won't go into the dry area unless it's really, really, really full of water, and then it'll overflow, then it might drip. So I'm just getting some colors ready to drop in there. I'm going to use a little bit of purple and okay, so I'm just going to draw a design here in water. And you want the water to be a little bit thick. Not thick, but you want it to be pretty wet. I'm just drawing a random design here. So you'll draw some sort of design, it doesn't really matter what it is, and then leave some areas without any water on it. And you can drop, if you feel like it's getting too dry, you can drop a little bit of water into it too. Just don't go overboard. Okay, so now I'm going to drop some colors into it, and you'll see the color will only go where the water is. So you can see it's just following the shape that I created. So I'm just making sure I got all the little areas of water. And you can just let it dry. And you'll have a really cool swirly sort of effect there. So now that you have 6 different techniques, there's still more I can show you, but this is a good start. So you can actually start thinking about how you might use some of these on your final painting. So some of these would work really good for animal textures, or maybe flowers or leaves, backgrounds, things like that. So between this and the ink techniques, you can probably think of some good ways to use them on your drawing. So that's it. So once you have done this, go ahead and clean up your paint set. While you're doing that, this should dry, and if you'd like to, you could actually try pulling the tape off if you feel like it's dry enough. But just be careful, make sure you pull against itself, so just pull it backwards and don't just rip it off. It might start to rip if it's still wet, so you just need to be careful. But you can see it left that whole area white. But I'm going to leave mine for a little while because it still needs to dry. So go ahead and take it off the table, clean your paint, and you are good to go. That is it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.